So just a quick run through on what's been happening in the VoLTE lab. Before we start, just a couple of dates. June 2014. By this date, we already had, as an industry, the first commercial, fully featured VoLTE service. Now, the speculation whether it happened kind of in June or May 2014, but it's around that date. 3rd of December 2019. That was the first VoLTE task force meeting that happened. That was before any of this, before any kind of I/O started, etc. That was held, and actually at that time, Jay was chair of that VoLTE group. Yeah, and that's kind of going back a good few years now. 8th of July 2021, the first VoLTE Roaming Lab meeting. That's the history of kind of where we've come from now. And where we've kind of gone into with that lab is trying to deal with these key challenges or key principles. Engagement across the industry. Driving insight, progress and challenges and opportunities. Highlight and share solutions and collaboration. And why did we even do this in the first place? Well, we did this because everybody was talking about VoLTE, and yet no one was doing anything about VoLTE roaming, I should say here, just to be clear. VoLTE roaming, nobody was doing anything. Then there was a few operators, I'm not going to mention names, which started the process and forced the process by shutting down their networks, their kind of, 3G networks. So this is kind of where we kind of came from. Throughout that journey from December 19 to kind of where we are now, there's been a significant number of meetings, a significant amount of work done by that group. These are just some of the areas that we've covered, and I'll touch on a few more on the next slide as well. But, we've kind of had experts come in and share insight into VoLTE solutions. We've launched the VoLTE Roaming Playbook. Now, it may not sound like a lot, but to have a document there that you can refer to with best practice, ideas, etc., has been really helpful to a lot of operators there. There's been kind of expert sessions, cross-operator sharing, insights and findings. There's just been a number of meetings where everybody has got together to actually solve problems and find solutions. Now, the GSMA is great. It sets a standard. But then it sets a standard and steps back. When you actually come to implement something, and you've got a problem or you've got a question, I was just about to kind of burst into Ghostbusters there. Who do you call? You call I/O. So I also wanted just to call out some of the things, some of the specifics that we focused on. Things like emergency calling. I think it was mentioned earlier that emergency calling has been one of the biggest challenges, and it kind of still is a big problem, but it's something that the VoLTE lab has done a huge amount of work on, or lawful intercept. There was touching on wholesale charging. It's always a delicate topic when you talk about the commercials, but we did talk about wholesale charging and the impact of VoLTE on both roaming and the wider wholesale kind of ecosystem, because it has a big impact on international and domestic interconnect. The whole piece around decommissioning kind of driving that. IREG testing. Now, IREG testing has been a blocker for many operators. It's been a real challenge, and there's been lots of problems there. And, kind of having a forum once, I recall back just recently where we were, proposing to end the VoLTE lab and saying, actually, it's not needed anymore. We actually spent about 2 hours talking about IREG testing and the challenges operators still faced. And then we kind of, touched on topics like regulation and SMS over IMS. So there's been a huge amount of work in that lab in terms of the biggest thing I would take away from it is the open conversations, the discussing, the sharing of best practice, sharing of information. And I think, and I hope that all the members that have come along and participated have kind of felt that kind of to be invaluable. So I had a very quick time just to run through that. I think that's everything from the VoLTE lab. So thank you very much.
So the 5G roaming lab was set up a couple of years ago with Luke Lamoureux as as the chair, and I came on as the deputy chair. The mission really for us at the time was to educate people on the operators on 5G SA, what was happening, what were the challenges, where it was going in the industry, and Luke has done a huge amount of work on BCE and educating on how BCE fits in and how those standards are constantly working and constantly evolving. And that's still going on today. We have a lab later on this week where we'll be sharing a lot of different information on 5G, because it's such a big story, and it was this sexy Hollywood kind of scene for everyone. The next generation, it's going to save the world. I kind of think of it sometimes like 3G. 3G was going to save the world, and it didn't. But 4G did. 5G is kind of going to save the world, will it? Nah, maybe 6G will, but we'll see. And basically, we're tracking what's happening in the industry, who's doing what kind of SA launches in roaming are happening, because most operators, roaming wasn't really part of the plan. So this is the work plan that we work towards constantly. We have a look at the different use case assessments, especially when it comes to network slicing and things like that. A lot of work around interconnect security, the different SEP models, all that kind of good stuff. Very little has really happened on voice over NR. There's very few operators who are deploying that. They've all deployed 5G NSA first and then rolled into SA. And in SA, you can still fall back to VoLTE. So the drive to deploy voice over NR is not there as much. They're trying to focus on just getting their SA cores up and monetize. But there's more to come on that over the next few labs that we look at. Then we look at all the different reference documents, and that's where Luke does a huge amount of work. He likes reading them way more than I do. I tend to fall asleep at page 1. So that's quite an interesting one when Luke kind of puts it into simple terms for everybody to understand and just get rid of all the technical jargon and kind of put it into a more meaningful way for everyone. So we look at that. Then there's the different wholesale charging. What's happening there? What type of charging models there are? What's BCE going to look like? How are the standards working on BCE? And anybody who has been deploying BCE, we've brought them in and tried to educate everybody on the pitfalls, the hurdles, the friction points that they need to be aware of and can overcome before they actually happen. And again, I've touched on slicing already. So this points that we have discussed, and this is really in 2024 and 25, is the agreements. We've had multiple different IPX providers come in and give presentations on their signaling and the methods that they use. We've also done quite a few different lessons learned from operators who have deployed domestically or have done a proof of concept in a roaming perspective, and also those who are deploying BCE, because BCE is integral to support SA and SA roaming. We've also looked at the status of handset certifications, which is something that I'm quite concerned about because of my history with VoLTE, and that is the certification process from OEMs can take up to 18 months, and many of the OEMs right now are approaching that process in the same way they did with VoLTE, which really impacted and delayed a lot of VoLTE rollouts. So we've also talked about SMS options in 5G SA, SMS over IMS, SMS over SGs. Again, what kind of pitfalls there are there. Accidental voice is another thing that's happening. We've discussed that at length. And again, everybody's talking about slicing and how fantastic it's going to be, and it's a game changer. And we are starting more recently to see use cases that again, they're all being deployed domestically, but some of them do have applications in roaming. And it's how that's going to happen and how we're going to monetize those types of solutions. So, yeah, on the last plenary we had all the SEP models and how they're being implemented by Orange, how Orange is doing it with the different types of SEP2 SEP or hubs and how that's going to work out. And then we have not had it presented yet, but there will be some new presentations on BCE and how the standards have come forward and what we're seeing from the different either BCE providers or those operators who've developed it themselves or a solution themselves. We've kept a very close eye on slicing, especially myself, because Verizon is big into slicing and how we're going to monetize everything that we're doing in 5G and 5G SA. So we're going to have a presentation on that later this week in the 5G RL session, and that goes into detail around the types of slices that support a customer who's using FaceTime or even the OTT apps when they're making video calls or voice calls, where they will be given a slice the moment they make the call, and that automatically provides them with all the parameters that they will need to have a perfectly stable and acceptable quality of service that they want, basically a guarantee. Now, what we've done with that is we've looked at providing that to customers who are on the top tier plans currently and that are roaming, or sorry, not roaming, but are domestically traveling in millimeter wave 5G SA areas that will eventually roll out into C-band. And the application to that, we give it away within our plan, but it is something that you could offer, you know, as a premium roaming tier plan or as a added benefit to, you know, a customer that could differentiate you from one of your travel sim competitors. And gives the customers a much better solution for calls. And then there's a couple of other slices that we're doing for first responders, so they get a guaranteed level of service no matter what, even if the network is congested. That's something that can also be rolled out into, say, military use cases and different things like that. So there's a few other slicing use cases that we will be discussing. And I don't know if there's anything that's pretty much it. We have some more sessions coming up and a lot more information that's going to come out of us. There is around, I think, circa 70 operators who have deployed commercially around the world. There's another 150 plus that are investing, getting ready to deploy. And just for information purposes here, we are tracking all of the roaming launches that have happened. There's quite a few that have happened across Europe. Some of those have just been SEP to SEP, really testing. Others that have actually launched, there's no special traffic, there's no special use case. It's really just to get it up and running, and there's standard kind of traffic with 5G SA devices to see how that rolls. And I'm sure we have some presentations, or we have someone tomorrow who's presenting, but not on 5G, but her network has deployed a full roaming agreement in Europe, and it is carrying live 5G SA roaming traffic in China as well. Between Macau and China, there's a launch and they're using full BCE. But in all of those that I've spoken to who have launched, they all speak about the same issue, is the device accreditation piece. It takes a long time to get the devices set up, and then certain OEMs are approaching it in the same way, and they decide when they're going to start the accreditation process and what device will be released in. So there's some really good information that comes out of the 5GRL from everybody who's involved. So any of you who are in operators or work with operators, please ask them to get involved. It's great to hear from people who maybe haven't launched and they're trying to launch, we can help them, and we can show them what the pitfalls are. We can show them or explain and help with business cases and different solutions that are there. And we can, you know, educate them on the hurdles that many of the operators, including my own and Luke's, have had to overcome to make it easier to launch. That's it from me.
Thank you.